talk to God very similarly the way I would talk to a friend. And of course, my word choice, my vernacular is gonna be a little bit different. Like, I'm not necessarily cursing. I'm not necessarily raising my voice, for example, or but I'm also making sure that that communication, it just is flowing. Hello, beautiful, benevolent beings. It is your innermost reflection here today, Denaja Shauna Davis. Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you may be. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have a very special and sacred topic to my heart and in my life. It's actually something I've been wanting to record and share with you guys here for a couple of years. If you've been here since pretty much the beginning of my early 2021 YouTube days, thank you so much. Like, you are so very, very appreciated. And this video goes back to my 2021 long video list of videos that never made it out. So anyways, today we will be talking about prayer, and more specifically, how to pray. I feel like this topic in this video being shared today in this current political climate is just actually very, very timely. Now, when I say how to pray, I mean how I pray. Okay, and hopefully this can be useful for someone who maybe is just starting out their spiritual journey, maybe is in deep recovery and reclaiming of their relationship to God, maybe finding God for the first time, etc., etc. And we also welcome people here who don't necessarily believe and maybe even have a practice of prayer. We welcome you in to contribute to the conversation. Keep it cute, keep it classy. Please. Thank you. Okay, so I feel like it's really important to talk about my current relationship with God. I am a believer. I am a firm believer of God. And not just of God. God, my entire spiritual team, which I personally believe exists of angels, ancestors, ascended masters, spirit guides. And so for me, when I pray, when I'm calling out to specific entities, deities, etc., I'm doing so with the intent knowing that sometimes it's God who I'm asking directly and needing assistance from. Sometimes it's one of my ancestors. Sometimes it might be an archangel. I pretty much always believed in God my entire life. I did not grow up religious at all. However, I did throughout my life attend Christian churches, and so it always felt really right. And then also just the Bible being in my home, my great grandmother being a pastor, and my grandma having a deep relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's also who I learned growing up throughout attending Christian churches. And then once I was about 16, my mom and I really got deep into the Christian church. However, I have people in my family who are Muslim. I have people that I'm connected to that are part of Ifa. I have people who practice Buddhism that I know. I'm mentioning all of these things because I've always looked at religion as a specific language to communicate with God. Okay, so much respect to all the religious people out there. Anyone who comes across this video, I do not mean that with any disrespect. I really mean that where it's if there are many different cultures, if there are many different ethnicities out here, if there are different climates and temperatures, it's to really accommodate the different needs of us human beings and the planet here on earth. It's why would we not have more than one way to communicate with God? And so that can look like a belief system, a religion, a different spiritual book, etc. My beliefs, I might say that a lot, but it's also okay. You can challenge my beliefs too. I give you permission, just be classy and cute. Always believed in God. Didn't necessarily grow up attending church every week. My mom did send me pretty off and on throughout my childhood, specifically for Easter Sunday. And then once we started building our own relationship with the church in my town, we started actually going pretty often, but we'd also make sure we were there for New Year's Mass. And I was kind of always put in places where the divine was present. So it's even though I didn't, for example, have the ritual, if you will, of like grace be something that me and all my family did growing up. Of course I did. When I would go and visit certain aunties and stuff who like did make sure that they said prayer before food, or did make sure that they said prayer before bed. Like I was taught those very specific prayers, but it wasn't something that was necessarily upheld by my immediate family. It's interesting to differentiate the fact that like in my household, there wasn't force and or strict discipline or strict rules and regulations when it came to how I decided to build my relationship with God. I was always told like, hey, God exists. Don't do that because God might feel like that, or you might this. And there was always conversation about heaven and God. Like, so it was definitely not a secret, and definitely not something that I believe my caregivers wanted me to like grow up not necessarily believing in, but it also was something that I had a lot of choice around, which now being in my late 20s, I'm so grateful for that, because honestly, I meet a lot of people today who are like kind of have gone through that period growing up where their caregivers and or their communities were very, very specifically rooted in one belief system, one religion, etc. And then them naturally becoming an adolescence and growing up, it's like, no, this doesn't align with me. This sounds like dogma. I'm gonna reject it. And honestly, for anyone watching this video who that's your story, I definitely feel for you. I don't know how much I'm gonna get into it in this video, but the last time that I was a part of a youth ministry group that was aligned to the Christian church back in my hometown, I'm so grateful that I had those couple of months where I was like just diving deeper into Christianity and into worship. It was beautiful. Like it was so aligned with the version of who I was at that time. And I was even feeling tension within my own spirit of like, wait a minute, like what do you mean Jesus Christ is above other spiritual beings such as Allah and this and that? What do you mean, even though people are Muslim, that like Christianity is the most supreme? Like what do you like? So these were the things that were coming up that like I felt deep division within myself, because I'm like, wait a minute, my aunties that live in Detroit, they're Muslim and they are beautiful, devoted women. Like what do you mean to say basically that their life and their belief practice and their way of living, which is so, in my opinion, holy, is not good enough? Say that to say that obviously we know the world we live in, and just because something works for someone and it really works and it really comes through and it really provides for them peace and solace and transformation, it doesn't mean it's going to have that same effect and impact on the next person. And so when we are dialoguing, it is important that we express our opinions and, you know, joyously praise and say the things that work for us, but also give room for what might not work for the other person. Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep that in mind when I'm on these videos and when I'm responding to comments, because I know right now the comments, they're cute and they're here, they're there, but it might not always be like that. So yeah, I would say that I've had a lot of just blessing to be able to form my own relationship with God throughout my life. And for someone who has so many 12th house placements and has honestly a really pivotal 9th house placement, I'm mentioning 12th and 9th house in astrology because, as I'm sure most of you guys already know, 9th house in astrology talks about religion, higher knowledge in terms of like kind of like worldly, stuff like that. And then the 12th house, generally speaking, talks about is the house that's connected to God and spirituality and the other realms, the higher realms, heaven, if you will. I have some really, really strong placements both in the 9th and 12th house. So naturally, even though I didn't grow up with, like, for example, the practice of going to church every single week, I didn't grow up with the practice of necessarily praying out loud to God every single day, I always had God around me. And I would go as far to say I always had God within me. And I wasn't the perfect kid, but I always did. And it was just like, whether it was me attending a Catholic high school and having to just get kind of like aligned to that system of mandatory religion classes for the first time in my life, mandatory masses a couple of times throughout the year. There were just so many summer camps and after school programs that were actually like dwelling within church spaces. So for me, I kind of look at that as God always keeping me very, very close. And that is truly my belief. of what God, the divine spirit, great spirit, JC, Jesus, Allah, like there's so many names, and also not trying to be disrespectful for the nuance between maybe who, for example, JC is to God. Going back to how like religions and belief systems end up being like different languages, to me it's like all that same source energy, that same power and potency that exists within the cosmos, that goes back to the Most High, but also is reflected within us. And so that brings me to prayer. My relationship with God today involves daily, continual, and consistent prayer. How divine prayer is simply communication with God, or whoever it is that you believe in. The Most High, the divine source, spirit, however you want to put language to it, it is that communication. Now, I'm not really here to speak to exactly how it's supposed to look, because I actually don't think it's supposed to look any way. Like, of course, if you take a religion class, for example, or you're studying out of a specific scripture, there's going to be passages, there's going to be like specific prayers that you can say for this and on this day, and those are equally as good. But I'm talking specifically to the average person who just wants to acknowledge God's love and God's grace and feel very held within that. And for me, I talk to God very similarly the way I would talk to a friend. And of course, my word choice, my vernacular is gonna be a little bit different. Like, I'm not necessarily cursing, I'm not necessarily raising my voice, for example, or like, but I'm also making sure that that communication, it just is flowing. Like, I remember when I first started praying out loud in like my late teenage years, like I think 18, 19, I was actually doing so in a way that felt very much so like just speaking to a mutual, respectfully as I say that. And then I like was dating someone at the time who also grew up Christian, who also believed in God and had prayer in their toolkit. And they were like, you sound weird. You're sitting here and you're thanking God for this, and you're thanking the sun, and you're doing all this extraness, and what is that? And I remember feeling like, oh, right. So let me put on this prayer voice that I hear when I go to church and like do it the more, old-fashioned way. And it just felt so wrong. And, from 18 to now, I have really played around with my, prayer format. I've prayed in many different ways. I've prayed with people, I pray alone, I pray by writing. I think, to me, the way I personally do so and the medium in which I do so does not matter, because it's still communicating the same message. So I can write a letter to God and that be a prayer and that be solid. Or I can close my eyes and really feel into my heart and allow the words to come up naturally, and that's still that same version of prayer and communication. Or I could be walking down the street and I don't necessarily feel safe and I need to pray. And so what I'll do is, if I have my headphones, I'm popping those in, I'm opening up voice memos on my phone, and I'm just getting it in. Every once in a while, I will just openly walk down the street and pray. I get a little nervous, and I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm talking to myself. I remember years ago during the pandemic, when I first started doing that, I was reading RZA from the Wu-Tang's autobiography, and towards the end of the book, he was saying something along the lines of walking down the street and people probably thinking he was crazy because he looked like he was talking to himself, and he was like, I promise I'm in communication with God. And that has always stuck with me. That is, I think, probably if there's nothing else that you walk away from this video with, the prime foundational tool that I want you to at least consider and be open to is that prayer is supposed to work for you. It is supposed to be something within your toolkit you can reach for at any given time. I personally think if people are not necessarily sure if you're talking to God, even better, because it can really work for you. If, for example, like you're experiencing a deep trigger on the grocery line at a store, And you might not have time to necessarily do all of the extra preparatory work that might take place if you were to pray at your altar, or if you were to pray at 5 a.m. with the rest of your family, or like it's supposed to work for you. And so I think it's just really important that you bring in your own language, you bring in your own style, your own zhush, because ultimately how you communicate with God is meant to serve you, and God already knows what's in your heart. God already knows how you are needing his, her, their, all the pronouns, yes, because God is omniscient. God is not necessarily gendered. And I think if God was, God would be a woman, but later. More on that later. Or at least feminine. Anyways, let's just speak briefly to God knowing what's already in your heart, and that like just being so important to remember and building a sacred relationship with God is the fact that sometimes we might not have the words. Sometimes I don't even have the words myself. Like there are literally moments where I'm speechless, and somatically I'm dropped solely into the feeling, the sensations, the intuition, the womb, and I'm nonverbal. And those moments when I feel like I need God the most, and God is usually right with me in that womb, I'm like, God, you already know what I need and what I'm trying to say. And so I'll say that, and that will be a prayer in of itself. And I think that's the thing. I think prayer is supposed to serve us. It is supposed to serve God. It is supposed to serve each other and the earth. And right now, folks and the earth and just the collective in general, we are in deep, deep, deep need of prayer. And I feel like I could not wrap this video up without just like getting a little bit giddy about the different forms of prayer. So I know I already spoke to about like more traditional prayer with words, prayer through writing, prayer if you're in like a pinch and you gotta pop those headphones in. But yeah, I want to speak about some other things. Prayer through breath and breathing, breath work. And that actually feels really, really sacred, because that's something that you can really do within like a minute, and letting that be a communication to God. Like as you're breathing in and out to calm your nervous system and to find that flow, asking God to help you in that moment. Try it. And knowing that that can be a way as well. Prayer through music, whether that's gospel music, whether that's a frequency or a binaural beat, or whether that's you humming or singing, or just I love you guys so much around your space, around your house. When we sing, our vibration is usually way, way, way more up. And so there's something that happens with that where it's like the universe, God can receive that, and it really, really, really integrate and be reflected back in so many powerful ways. So I probably need to start singing my prayers, but yeah, maybe we'll challenge myself to do that. And then there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about before I wrap up, because I feel like I'm definitely giving y'all the whole works, and it feels so beautiful to do so. Prayer through cleansing and clearing out as well, whether you are physically like clearing out space in your home, cleaning, or more so energetically. Like these are all ways to communicate with God. And most importantly, I'm so happy, thank you Spirit, for allowing this part to come back in, because I was like, ooh, it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. Spirit is like, no, you need to say this. God operates at the frequency of clarity. And so this is the second thing that I want you to walk away with, if nothing else, is that whatever it is that you're doing in your exploration of coming closer to God and deepening in your spiritual practices, deepening into your prayer, is if it feels good, it should be expansive and resonant and just like vibrant. It'll be clear. And yeah, if it's the opposite, you know, I'm not saying it's bad, but yeah. And I feel like that's a whole ass another video. God operating at the frequency of clarity, just because I see how that can be applicable to so many things in life, from relationships to moments where it's like we hear no and we really wish it was a yes, to just so many things. But that is such a gem that an old friend of mine shared with me, and I have never forgotten of, is God operates at the frequency of clarity. And so yeah, I feel like whoever you are, wherever you may be on your journey with God, on your walk, it's just very important to know there is a lot of information out there, and now I'm adding to the information, and nothing might stick. And whatever unique, beautiful relationship that you have crafted thus far with the divine, I'm pretty sure it's working. I'm pretty sure it's sacred, and I'm pretty sure it's keeping you protected. If that's all that needs to be clearly affirmed in your heart by you clicking on this video, then hey. Okay, y'all, this is probably the longest video I've done in a while. I want to say I've been sitting here for about 25 minutes. I'm gonna start to close this out. And it just wouldn't be a video about how to pray if I didn't close us out with a prayer. So, if it feels right and accessible to you who may be watching and are listening, please take a moment to bow your head, close your eyes, and or find a soft gaze ahead. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing me to be here in this moment, to be a channel and a vessel for you to speak through me. Thank you for allowing me to communicate what is my version of my lived experience and my truth, my ashe, when it comes to building and deepening my relationship to you through prayer, through ritual, through celebration. I pray that for anyone who might be watching, who is seeking and yearning to grow deeper to you and to strengthen their prayer practice, that you may show them the way, and that you may allow them to know that your love is meant to feel easeful, supportive, and that you do vibrate at the frequency of clarity. May you continue to aid those of us who are aching and in need. Continue to care for those of us who continue to care and restore balance here on earth. We thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate you. I really love you. I thank you. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for my gifts. Thank you for the throat chakra activation. Thank you for the sweat dripping from my armpits as confirmation. Sending much love to everyone listening and or watching. Amen. Ashe, aho. And I'll see you guys in a future video soon.